Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Talking Pictures with Talking Pictures. Your favorite baby boy is back. I was gone last episode.
You missed him so much.
Aw, thank you. I was gone last episode because I was moving in to the undisclosed location that I'm currently in. I'm Anthony Barnett, last I remember.
I remembered as well.
Yeah, and joined with me today is...
Hola. Me caro Coley Irving.
That doesn't mean what you think it means, but okay. Coley and I are here. Jaycee and Shane are both busy boys and couldn't make it today, and we miss them very much. I need to like call them and talk to them because I love them, and it's been a minute, right? It's been a couple weeks now.
It's been a real hot minute.
Yeah.
Since we were all last in the same place.
Yeah.
In several weeks.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days.
Those were the days, man. Those were the days. But yeah, we have an interesting movie to talk about today.
Interesting is a very good word.
Yeah. It's a movie that exists and has existed for over 30 years.
Speaking of things that came out a hot minute ago.
Yeah, that is true. 2001, A Space Odyssey, the Stanley Kubrick film starring someone who looks a lot like Neil Armstrong. What's the guy's name?
The moon guy is
Neil.
Moon
Boy.
The
Louis
the
Armstrong is who I thought I was saying when I said Neil.
The fake athlete is Lance.
I don't know what you're talking about. He's my role model. That's what we're talking about today. And partly because recently, it's been 2 weeks now since it left, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah, so
2 weeks, because last weekend was,
Yeah, recently there was a re-release in IMAX of...
it was entirely in IMAX. They put it back out in theaters in 4K. And in select locations and IMAX 4K.
Your baby boy is very, very excited for the home release in 4K,
which is coming soon.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited about that. But
they widespread released it. They put it in 70mm IMAX wherever that applied. So you basically only saw that.
They did do 70 too.
Yeah,
it wasn't just digital.
No,
That's
they
good.
did it in 70, but only in the expensive places like Cali and New York.
I think, speaking of last week's episode, I found out one of the days that I was actually editing that Lawrence of Arabia was released in 70mm, and at the Austin Paramount, which I'm in Austin, I'll say it. Damn it, you figured me out, audience, but I'm in Austin, Texas, and it was that Wednesday that I was editing it.
I saw that. I saw that.
And I was like, damn it, because I
was out.
Mm-hmm.
No, you first. Go for it.
Well, basically, I was just going to say that I haven't seen it, and listening to you guys talk about it made me very interested. And I was lucky that somehow I listened to the entire episode, but didn't get any spoilers because it was one of those things
it's hard to put
my dad
together.
Told me that in the military he when he would have to type up military reports, they were trained to type letter by letter in a way that their brain didn't register the whole word. It was just the letters. So they could receive a transmission, type it out, and then send it without knowing what it said. And that was sort of me editing that episode. Somehow I didn't pick up on any spoilers. Well, a couple. No,
I remember,
he kills people. That's all I know.
when I watched it, I had Googled it so many times because I was just reading about it more. Yeah. And I saw there was several showings in different art theaters that were close to me.
Yeah, but
audience, you're not going to trick me into giving away my location.
Yeah. Those sly bastards.
Those sly bastards that have no sway in what I say on this audio podcast.
Exactly. But 2001 came out again. I saw it in IMAX on a big old screen.
As did I.
Real big.
Very large screen.
It was insane.
When you compare it to the screen we saw Blade Runner, what would you say? Same size or a little bigger?
Oh, much bigger.
Mine was about the same size.
Really?
I mean, it's still a good size.
Awesome. Ours was how the Omni, which really annoys me, is a big old dome that it's spread out across. Yeah. It was bigger than that, but not quite as, not as domey. You didn't have to look up and it wasn't like bent around, which always annoys me.
Yeah.
But it was weird. It was one of those things where like it should have been so big. Sorry. Accidental double entendre that
zing
bazonka it should, you know, the bazonka from the hit television show Big Bang O'Leary.
The big dang theory.
Yeah, the I wish it were the Big Dang Theory.
The Big Dang Theory.
But yeah,
I can't wait to see all three people that are laughing at our joke.
Oh yeah. Yikes. Harsh truth there, pal.
Harsh truth.
I'm rusty, pal. Man. It's been like 3 weeks since I've done one of these. But so it's like the screen should have been big enough that you could see it perfectly from any spot, but somehow I got the vibe, because I wasn't perfectly in the middle. I was like only a couple seats off of the middle, but I definitely could tell that the best experience was right in the middle, because it even looked a little weird from where I was, because it was like almost too large, but it was interesting. It was nice because you got to soak up every detail, because this is one of those movies where like it moves so slow that you really want it, I think, to be on a giant screen, because I think you can get bored easier on a small screen because you get all the information.
That's something we talked about.
Yeah, you like get all the information you can pretty quickly on a small screen, but there's so much more detail and, you know, more like literally just more distance for your eyes to move from one side of the screen to the other to like really soak everything in.
The one thing I'll say about the 4K transfer, since that's obviously what got us into this topic, so talking about this first, I think, is our best segue. The 4K transfer is amazing.
Oh, except it was delicious.
There was a few scenes, I don't know if it was the same for you, because it just been my projector, where some of the shots, because of the way they were shot, looked like on the bigger screen, it put it at a disadvantage because it was obviously fake. Like, it just, you could tell that something was there was a few shots. I'm trying to remember exactly what I saw.
The
but it was
first
like
rocket was like that for me. Like when he's going, what's his name? If we had done this a week ago, I would have remembered. The guy that we're with at the beginning. I'm going to look it up.
Dr. Scientist guy.
Yeah, Dr. Science Boy. When he's going into space, I was going to say the first time, but the only time, there's like a shot of a rocket. I don't know if it's the one he's in or if he's like passing one, but that first shot I was like, oh, that looks like a toy. But then everything else to me looked really good, so I don't know what was up.
There was a few shots where it felt like, since it was stretched out, they couldn't convert it all the way to IMAX, and they just kind of had to bite the bullet because of the way it was shot for like the aspect ratio to make those miniatures work. And it just looked super grainy, and I could tell everything was like not there. But then there are some shots that were just like, wow. And like you said, it being such a large screen really opens up
I got you
the whole thing, and it makes it like you can pay attention to everything easier, and it keeps your brain from exploding. Because we've both seen the movie before. We actually saw the movie in the same environment. That
was my first
time, I'd say.
Oh, that was your first time as well?
I mean, I'd seen bits and pieces, and of course I knew about it, but I hadn't seen the whole thing in full. But sitting there in kind of like a dark classroom-ish environment.
The name of the guy is Haywood Floyd.
Yeah, Dr. Floyd. Seeing it for the first time like that, it really...
And I was lucky because I had seen it in 70mm once before in New York. On a significantly smaller screen. But yeah. If you hear audience a couple of like crinkly sounds in the background, that's my awesome roommate. I won't say his name, I won't do that to him, but he threw up a thumbs up. He's a lovely boy.
Aw, shucks.
He said, aw, shucks.
Aw, shucks.
Yeah.
Aw, shucks. So, yeah, it was an IMAX. It was in 4K. If you didn't see it, I'm sorry. If it ever shows up again, see it immediately.
Oh, for sure. Definitely see it on a big screen. I'm sure it's still touring. Because, what's that guy's name? You know, the guy that did Dark Knight...
Nolan?
Yeah, Christopher Nolan. He was instrumental in the 4K transfer.
He spearheaded the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And doing the new 70mm prints to tour. So I'm sure it's still going around. But yeah, definitely see it.
You know, seeing that movie in IMAX and knowing that Christopher Nolan was the reason I got put into 4K IMAX just made me realize how much Interstellar wants to be 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, that's probably pretty true.
It just reminded me of that. I was like, oh,
it's like a much
that makes sense.
More comfortably, I would even argue, better paced. Well, I haven't seen it in a while. I can't say that, but
Interstellar is really paced for a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
Really paced, really well paced.
Yeah,
for
it is.
A 3-hour movie.
I'd say it's pretty paced. I would agree that it's paced.
It's pretty paced. It's paced.
But yeah, let's
like Orlando.
Let's dive right into it.
Let's spacewalk right into it. Let's other relative terms to this incredibly slow film.
Yeah, let's really slowly. Really slowly. What would you call? Yeah, drift into it. That's a good one. But yeah, so I'm gonna start with my hot take on this movie, which I developed after watching it in IMAX. I developed this theory that if this movie came out today, it would not be well received. I think.
Well, it wasn't well received when it came out in the 60s.
But like, you know, now everyone's like, oh, Kubrick's a genius. There's a ton of hidden meaning. Everyone is constantly dissecting it. I think if it came out today, it's a little too opaque to be well received. I think people would be like, today, oh, there's nothing here. Like, he's trying. I think people would be like, oh, this is a pretentious student film. You mean. You know? To
me, if the movie came out today in the landscape that we're currently in with sci-fi films, it would be nothing. And I think the reason that it is so remembered is because, and I remember I said this the first time we ever saw it, the film just, it feels like something if you've seen before, and then you stop and you think about the fact that this came out in 62, and every other movie that you've seen with these kind of effects happened because
68
this movie came.
But yeah, it all came from it. You're right.
So, like, let me give you an example of movies that came from the 60s. Because, like, at that time, this was nothing anybody had ever seen before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in the 1960s, you had movies like The Graduate, or, like, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
Or, Christ, I'm trying to...
Look up like a science fiction movie that would have had, like, a lot of effects.
Without this movie, Star Wars doesn't happen. Without this movie... any science fiction film you can think of doesn't happen.
Blade Runner doesn't exist. Star Wars is
the big one. Blade Runner doesn't exist.
Star Wars is the big one, you're right.
Star Wars is the big one.
Trek exists because I think it came out before it. But, right? Didn't the original series, didn't it start?
I think you're correct.
I'm going to look it up. This is audience.
It's really hard to navigate IMDb when the advertisements for Jack Ryan are slowing down the entire site. Thanks, Jim.
The original series debuted in 1966.
Ooh, hot darn.
Yeah.
Yeah, movies that were coming out, Psycho, The Apartment, The Hustler, West Side Story, all of these things. Lawrence of Arabia, that's why I was thinking 62. Lawrence of Arabia came out in 62. Wow. So all these movies that are big and epic in scope, but none of them
were in space. None of their special effects
went there.
Yeah, at all close.
The 60s is kind of the era of films doing things that no one's ever seen before and setting a foundation for a genre.
Yeah.
Stuff like 8.5 came out in the 60s. Persona came out in the 60s.
Have you watched 8.5 yet, by the way?
Since you haven't moved?
Okay.
I haven't.
It's cool.
So
dude,
upset.
I'm taking
I brought all my Criterion films.
Dude, I brought everything as well. That's why I'm not going to get any more specific than Austin, because I don't want to get robbed of all my movies.
Get robbed.
What was I talking about? Oh, 8.5. I'm in an Italian cinema course. I was really lucky to get into that. Luckily.
I was really luckily.
I was really lucky to get into my Italian cinema course, but 8.5 isn't on the list, weirdly, of movies that we're gonna watch. It's a lot of like neo-realism, but like not 8.5, which I find interesting. Really? Yeah.
8.5's Fellini, right?
Yeah. And that's
interesting.
The first two movies that we watched are Rome, Open City, and Paisan, which are both Rossellini. or Rossellini, or however you want to pronounce it.
You're right.
And Fellini helped write Rome Open City, which is really interesting.
I'm surprised you guys aren't watching 8.5.
Right?
Because Fellini is a big deal in Italian cinema.
Oh, yeah. He, like, the first day we were in class, our teacher was like, yeah, when Fellini died, there was literally, like, a nationwide day of mourning. Just, like, he was trying to, like, explain how important film and, like, the arts are to Italy. And he was like, yeah, when Fellini died. Anyway, we're getting off track. I would love to talk about it. But so, yeah, I definitely think that people would not... Yeah. It would get, like, a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. They'd be like, it's too slow and there's no point.
It came out in a time where no one has seen something like this before. And because of that... It has laid so many foundations, and I really do think there is a point to this movie. Mm-hmm. A lot of people talk about how convoluted it is, but
yeah, because like you don't know that there are 3 monoliths unless you like read the book or something.
The ending really is open to interpretation because there's no actual answer. But if you think about it, the movie's very straightforward. Like it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does. It's not all building towards one plot because it's the beginning is a plot.
Literally,
and then...
the way that I see it, it's almost kind of like an opera. For any of you stage fans out there, it seriously feels like just a musical suite with images to support it. It kind of feels like one of the I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like the Katsi. It's this series of documentaries that literally just like shows like pictures of the world with some Philip Glass score behind it. It's the Katsi trilogy, QATSI. So that's like every time I see it, like that's literally what the title means to me. It just feels like an odyssey through space and time. Yeah. Through the human race.
Yeah. And what I find really interesting is that it feels very objective watching, because for those of you who haven't seen it, spoiler town, but I'll try to give like the briefest synopsis. The part 1 is called Dawn of Man, and it focuses on a group of sort of early humanoids. They're closer to apes than they are to humans, and it focuses on this one guy specifically who, like, his community, sort of in quotation marks, gets pushed out of like a watering hole. Jaycee just said love you, so that's to us, but also to you, audience.
What a pal.
Yeah, what a boy. What a good boy. So they get like driven out of their watering hole by another group of ape thing boys. I hope that's not offensive to all the early humanoids out there.
Oh yeah. to all the squatches.
The squatches.
You're fine. You're banking hard on that Jack Link's money. You're good.
Oh, got you. For a minute I didn't know what you meant by squatch because I was thinking squanch, like from Rick and Morty. But they're fine. They're rich.
It's making a belated advertisement joke.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they don't do those anymore. But yeah, so anyway, these ape boys, these monkey boys get driven out of their watering hole, and then they spend a lonely night in the wilderness. That's all spooky, and then the next morning there's this big block of something. It's a large black like pillar there,
widely regarded as the monolith.
Yes,
you'll hear that word a lot.
Mm-hmm. And they one of the guys touches it, and then they all start touching it, and really piercing music starts playing, and then it cuts to like another part a little later where one of the ones that touched the monolith picks up a bone and realizes that he can start using it as a weapon. And all of this is without words, so this is what people have gained from the book and from theorizing. But he realizes that he can start using this bone as a weapon, and then he goes and kills the ape that like drove them out of their watering hole, and then now they have like a bunch of food because they can kill animals and all this stuff. And then it cuts to, it does one of like the most famous match cuts of all time. I guess we're doing now a series of episodes on movies with good match cuts.
I mean, I guess. But that's what it seems like.
Yeah, he throws the bone up in the air and it flips and like spins in frame, and then it cuts to a satellite in space. And so we've jumped forward to the year that it takes place, 2001, and a doctor named Haywood Floyd goes up to...
well, here, let's put the brakes. Let's talk about this cut for a second.
Oh, okay.
The reason I think this cut is so cool, and I'm sure every book or every person over the age of 21 that has a college degree has probably said this before, but it, by cutting the way it does, it perfectly kind of juxtaposes the first weapon ever used by man to this new weapon that is now like being used by man, but like hundreds of years in the future.
Yeah, exactly. It's to show how we've evolved
all
so far.
Words.
Yeah, and
genius,
it's great,
in my opinion.
But so yeah, then we're following Haywood Floyd, who is like one of the leaders of the moon base Clavius, or they call it Clavius, but Arctic Monkeys calls it Clavius in one of their songs, so I like saying Clavius. He says sarcastically. But so he goes up to this moon base, and we learn that people think that an outbreak has happened on the base, and they're like, hey man, like, can you give us information? And he's like, sorry. And then once he gets to the base, we realize that they're yeah, go ahead.
In reading about this, I found something really interesting about how that first scene, and we're trimming over these. These are very big portions.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Dawn of Man sequence.
The plot is going to take like 5 minutes to explain, but the movie is like almost 3 hours long. So they take their time.
They take their sweet time. But yeah. I think it's cool how in 30 minutes how it kind of shows that kind of evolution, because you know the first time that man ever encounters man, they scream at each other and they kill each other.
Yeah.
And another way to kind of juxtapose how far we've come, the next time we see man encountering man, it's in a very civil conversation, and they have verbal disagreements, and they don't immediately.
That's true. That's interesting. I've never thought of that.
All of these are, again, is what kind of makes me view this film as like a musical suite covering the Odyssey of man across space and time.
I got you.
That's something I noticed. I thought that was a really interesting point.
And meanwhile, I just love like the production design, like those red chairs.
The production design is insane.
Against the white.
On IMAX, the white and the red just looks real crisp.
I know, man. My like the cinematography side of my brain was just like, oh my god, like the whole time.
Boy. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt.
But yeah, so
it'll get your brain will get even more excited once we get to the last 15 minutes.
Oh, dude.
Which I'm
that's
assuming
really
will be
interesting.
what the rest of what we talk about will be about, is how amazing that Stargate sequence looks.
I think that'll be a couple minutes, because that's been talked about a lot. But so yeah. But so Haywood Floyd, he goes to the base, and we learn that there hasn't been an outbreak. Instead, that's just a cover story, because the Americans have found something on that was buried 4 million years ago. Deliberately. We find out that like all reports say it's been deliberately buried on the moon's surface. And it's another monolith. Like from the beginning, and our boy Haywood touches it like a dingus, a really sharp, piercing, if you've been falling asleep, you're awake now sound.
Yeah, that's what it's for. Let's be honest.
Yeah, because everyone kind of dozes a little bit, but then that moment, literally in my theater, both times that I've seen it in a theater, well, probably even in class, I don't remember now, but everyone's gone, oh, like you hear everyone start to like move.
Somebody walked out of my theater.
Really?
During that, yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
It was just too much.
That's rough. But yeah,
not because it was boring, just because the sound. I mean, they came back in. The sound was just too much.
Oh, that's good. On
those IMAX speakers.
Yeah, that's true. Those speakers really help. But so then we cut to, I don't remember what the second part's called.
I don't think that they don't call it anything. Don't. The next subtitle doesn't come until we're about to enter the Stargate.
I'm gonna fact check you on that. I'm pretty sure there's another one.
But then we cut to what is probably the main story of the movie, with our two astronauts.
I would say that the main plot, because it starts at the beginning and ends at the end, is this
the
stuff,
overarching thing.
But the longest, for sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
You could say that your main character, kind of, is Bowman, who is one of our astronauts.
For sure.
But the rest of the film follows Bowman and what's the other guy's name?
Let me look.
Bowman and another astronaut that dies, so you don't remember him because he doesn't do anything after he dies.
I felt bad for him though, dude. This is the first time I've ever felt bad for him. Frank Poole, Dr. Frank Poole.
Poole, yeah. Bowman and Dr. Poole, they are being sent to, is it Jupiter?
Yes, and they don't know why.
They're being sent to Jupiter because they don't know why, but we know it's probably because they're going to investigate another one of these monoliths. But they're being sent with a whole crew. The rest of the crew is in hypersleep. Mm-hmm. They aren't. And they're also accompanied with what is essentially the ship's main computer, the HAL
AI
9000 unit,
and it is an artificial intelligence. Okay, so it's the Dawn of Man, Jupiter Mission, and Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite. Gotcha. Those are the three parts.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Maybe I was thinking there's not a subtitle for.
Mm-hmm. It might come back after the intermission, which I must say was kind of a relief watching it this time.
Having an intermission in the middle of the movie was something I never knew I wanted.
Yeah.
Until it happened. Having 15 minutes to like go get something to drink. Or pee.
Stand up and decompress.
Stand up.
Yeah.
Which like I'm someone that watches a lot of plays. And intermissions are just something I'm used to. But once you watch a movie, it kind of just feels like you're in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. With a movie like this, having an intermission was perfect.
Yeah, and it fed into, as I've told Coley this. I have a dream to basically screw over movie theaters and make a movie that has
an intermission.
Has an intermission, because like they don't do that anymore. They did it. I was surprised at at the G-Town Theater when I saw Sound of Music. There's an intermission, and they actually let us go because they're doing they're doing their flashback cinema. Yeah,
that's cool. I'm glad I did, because that's a long ass movie.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, so that's my dream. But so yeah, we follow Bowman and Poole as this computer. I noticed. So what was interesting was that a lot of the more surface level, I guess, plot stuff, like stuff that I guess more like the emotional subtext, as opposed to like this is a statement on whatever, but like just what the characters are feeling. I noticed more immediately this time, like what was going on. So like when Hal asks David, he's like, hey, I have suspicions about the mission. He's like, isn't it weird that like there was this show of putting all these doctors in hypersleep, and we don't know where we're going, or like we don't know what we're doing and all this stuff. Like, isn't it kind of weird? And David kind of shrugs him off, and he's like, oh, what are you like developing your crew psychology report? And then Hal goes, oh, yeah, you caught me. He's sort of like, I mean, he doesn't say it like that because he speaks in a very cold, monotonous voice, but then he says that's when he introduces this part of their ship that's like, it's part of their communicator that's malfunctioning, which we later figure out wasn't malfunctioning, and he made a mistake, ? We know in 2018 that your Robo Boy is going a little crazy. But like that was interesting to me, because like I never really figured out why he did that in the first place. I thought like it was just a malfunction, but then I realized this time, I was like, oh, when David doesn't take his fears seriously, he's all about self-preservation, like the whole movie. So he doesn't want to get shut down. He doesn't like want anything bad to happen. So he's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna say that there's a problem so that they fix it, and like I'll be safe. He's a child. It's really interesting.
He really is, though.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that point is demonstrated even more when you, like, we get to the end of the film, when they take him apart, and like they start, he's like, hey, Hal, did the person who created you, like, do you know any like song? I don't remember exactly what Bowman says, but he has him sing a song.
Yeah, Hal goes, when he's shutting down Hal. Okay, so we'll explain how it gets to this point. Hal tells them that this thing is faulty, that they find out isn't faulty. They kind of worry, and they're like, okay, this is the first time there's ever been an error with one of these model computers, and he's in control of like everything on the ship. So they go into a pod and turn off all the outside communications on the pod so that he can't hear them. And they start discussing what to do about Hal if it turns out that he is malfunctioned. And they decide that the only thing they can do is shut him down. And you explain what Hal does, because it's super interesting and really, really cool.
They go about talking, and they keep cutting back to Hal, and they keep cutting back to everyone else. And then at some point you realize that we are seeing this conversation through Hal's perspective, because what it does
it's them talking for most of the conversation until they say we would have to destroy him. It's the camera's inside the pod with them. Yeah, but then after they say that, it cuts to Hal's like one like Cyclops eye,
his glowing red eye.
Yeah, exactly. And then it cuts to his point of view and like whips back and forth. Yeah,
it does like this vignette onto their mouths as they're speaking, and you can't tell what they're saying, but you can tell by the way that the scene is being played out that Hal knows exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, he's reading their lips.
And they do all of this without dialogue. They don't have Hal going, "Oh,
yeah," because it is silent.
See them, but, but it's entirely silent, and it's
great.
It's one thing I have to commend this movie on, is they do so much with so little. Yeah, and Kubrick's talked about how it's a 2-hour and 16-minute movie, and 40 minutes or less of the movie is actual words.
That's probably true. I've never even thought about that.
It's just like a suite, like I said.
Yeah.
It's just like a suite of music. It's almost kind of like an opera with visual accompaniment.
Yeah. But so then Frank Poole goes out to replace the faulty whatever, or put it back, or whatever he's doing. And all of a sudden the pod, once he's out of it, because they have to take the pod outside to fix the thing. And then he leaves the pod and does a spacewalk to grab the whatever. And as he's grabbing it, we see the pod turn terrifyingly, because there's no music or sound, but it slowly turns, and then we cut zoom into Hal's red eye on the pod, because there's like another unit of him in the pod, and then it cuts to Frank Poole spinning out into space, and so Hal used the pod to like grab him and like flip him, and then the pod itself goes haywire. And then this is where shit kicks up, because David goes outside in a pod to grab him, and this sequence goes on for a good minute. Like nowadays it would probably be like 2 minutes long, but it's, I think, a good another 10 minutes, right, of him going out just to grab Frank.
It's oh my god, it's so slow and so deliberate. It sucks every little last second out of every single scene.
Yeah. And once you get used to it, moments like that are still tense, but like I feel like a lot of people could not get used to it. So like, you know, because to me, I'm like, get him for the full 10 minutes. But like I feel like for a lot of people, if it hasn't grabbed them yet, then
they're already gone.
Yeah, then they're like, dude, just get him already. You know what I mean?
And the rest of the movie will make them. That's the beauty of like seeing this in a theater, is that you're kind of stuck there, and you're
exactly
part of it already. If you watch this kind of thing at home, you're gonna get
so bored
by something else.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, he finally goes out and he gets him. He rescues Poole, who is hella dead.
Oh, very.
And we have probably the most quoted scene of all time from this movie.
Yeah,
is when Bowman tries to get in, and he keeps playing with Hal to open the pod bay doors, Hal.
Yeah, when he comes back, he's like, Hal, open the pod bay doors, and it's just silence, like the first couple times he says it, and then what does he say, Coley? What does he say, Coley?
Oh boy, I can't wait to accidentally misquote this. What's Bowman's first name?
David.
David? You do it. I don't remember the exact quote. I always misquote this.
Well, the thing that I always remember is that basically he's he's like, I can't do that, David.
Oh, he says Dave. He's like, I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah. He's like, I can't do that, Dave. Something like that. It's always misquoted. I don't know. It's like Luke, I am your father. It's probably never perfectly quoted. But so he won't let him in, and then Dave is like, bro, let me in. And then
I'm stuck in space, dude.
Yeah, he's like, bro, I don't want to be out here, dude. Let me in. But so then Hal says the line that I always remember, which is, this conversation can serve no purpose any longer. He says it. He says it better than that.
Clearly then.
But yeah, just because the grammar's weird for some reason, that always sticks with me. But so then your boy Dave has to drop Frank's body back into space, and then he has to open the manhole cover entrance, but he doesn't have his helmet, so he can't go out into space. And then he turns around the pod to where the door at the back of the pod is facing the door into the space station, and he uses the explosive bolts on the back of the door to rocket himself into the other doorway. And what's great is that they set those up so many times, just through the it's like a close-up of the back of the pod rotating around, and you see it says explosive bolts, so that when he finally does blow it up,
you're like, oh, he's gonna do it, he's gonna use the bolts.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't seem like it came out of left field.
Yeah, and it definitely doesn't either seem like, oh, I know exactly what's gonna happen, he's gonna use the explosive bolts. It's just a little detail, because the movie's filled with these little details of what space travel is gonna be like, so it just feels like that, but it's very clearly set up anyway, and then they use it later. But so then he goes in, he grabs a space helmet, and then walks through the entire ship to where Hal's processing unit is, and then he very slowly and methodically, he has to insert a key into a bunch of different keyholes over and over.
Single memory.
Yeah, and we watch every single one. Yeah, and he slowly kills Hal, and Hal's voice slowly goes from this to this, and then that's when Hal says, he sort of resets, and you don't see this, you can just tell by the way he's talking. He stops from being stop, Dave, please stop, Dave, to then he goes, he's like, good afternoon, gentlemen, I was created in Jackson, Wyoming, or whatever he says. It's not Jackson, Wyoming. And then he's like, I'm a HAL 9000 unit, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, would you like me to sing a song? And then that's when Dave just goes, yes, Hal, I would like to hear a song, Hal. That's when he says it. And Dave's sweating and breathing.
In, his dead Quaalude voice.
Yeah.
And he's just
and it's Daisy.
Yeah.
Give me your answer, do. Sorry, my voice isn't deep. I wish I could do that better. But I got a real high pitched voice. But so yeah, that's what he does. So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very childlike. Mm-hmm. And we go from there, and then the last line of dialogue. Oh man, I'm gonna misquote it, but the last line of dialogue actually kind of perfectly sets up what's about to happen.
What? Hal's last line of dialogue?
No. It's from the guy on the TV.
Yeah. I was gonna say, as he's shutting Hal off, a TV turns on, and it's a message from Haywood Floyd, and he's like, "All right, boys, you're getting sent to." It's now that you're at Jupiter, and they're not yet, but it's only because Hal's being turned off. He's like, "Now that you're at Jupiter, I can tell you the mission. There was a monolith, and it signaled another thing." He doesn't really say it that specifically, but he's like, we found something and it sent a signal to another something, and you're gonna go find it. It's called the monolith. Go get it, boys.
Go have fun, kids.
Yeah, and so Dave, stranded in space with nothing left to do, and all the crew is dead, because what's his face? Hal turned off all the life support systems for everyone else that was in hypersleep. Dave decides to go to Jupiter and find this thing angrily, I think, even though it's not really performed that way, because all the performances are very clinical in this movie, which I think, I don't know why he did that, but it adds a really interesting atmosphere to the whole shebang.
I couldn't find the what exactly he says, but I saw this. It stuck with me. He talks about the Haywood Floyd talks about how this thing they're looking for can't be explained.
Yeah.
And we're not sure if we can explain, or something along those lines, which I think perfectly sets up The rest of the movie, which is exactly like that. Can't be explained, is like insane, and there's no more dialogue for the rest of the movie. It's all told.
Oh, there
visuals.
not is there? Wow.
It's insane. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I still think it's the best part of the movie is the last bit, and it's amazing to see in IMAX. Like the Stargate actually opening and you falling down it for the first time, just watching it is just like...
Yeah. So with that being said, our boy Dave drives the big old ship to Jupiter, and then we see, I mean, we don't see that, but it cuts to another monolith flying in space, and then you see the ship, and then he gets out and gets in a pod and is like following it, and then it like lines up, the monolith itself lines up with like a bunch of planets that are lined up, and then it like cuts back to Dave and then cuts back to like the stars, and then they split open and a bunch of light comes through, and it's an effect that I can never remember the name of, but he's going through a Stargate.
It's like, I think it's called like a slip screen or like a basically the way it works is they cut a
it's something's photography.
It's split screen photography.
Yeah.
Essentially the way that works is they take like a slit in something and they project something behind. It's you have like a piece of paper or something in front of your
with
screen.
like a bunch of lit up patterns behind it.
Yeah. And behind this piece of paper they put up like something with a bunch of different patterns, and then they cut a hole in this and they move the camera back and forth in front of this slit, and it has this perception of light entering in through this very like linear tunnel.
It's beautiful.
It's super weird.
And it looks like a screensaver. Do what?
And
the diagram makes no sense.
And it still makes no sense.
Yeah, it absolutely doesn't make sense. But yeah, it's funny because nowadays it looks like a Windows Vista background that like has moving lasers. But like if you think about in the context of back then, it's bonkers.
It's nothing you've ever seen before. Still, a lot of it really is.
Yeah, I love all the like liquid effects when it like transitions from that to like the like glowing liquid. Once you get to the liquid
effects, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have no idea how this is done.
Yeah, like that stuff. At all. That stuff, I always think like, oh, they just like put some drops on like a surface and they filmed the surface, but they could have not. And then the only part of that really I don't like, because that's my favorite part. But then the part of that sequence that I don't like is when it's all the aerial shots of different landscapes, but they've clearly just like switched the colors.
Used like the negative.
Yeah, and then like they've used the negative and then like
it's like
hand painted or something.
Canyon.
Yeah, it's like they made all the black colors purple and all the white colors green. Yeah, and it's just like, but it's still, I'm sure back then they were like, cool. What is this?
It's nuts.
Yeah.
And then that leads us to the final scene, in which
David Doman,
the baby Doman, he arrives in this place that kind of seems like it's without time, or like it's
just like a white room.
And slowly, visually,
dude, that sequence is
around it,
insane. I love it so much.
Without like doing like 10 years later or 30 years later, he kind of watches himself age.
Yeah, and it just cuts.
Hears a noise and he turns around and he sees himself in like 30 years sitting at a dinner table.
Yeah,
and then we cut to the POV of that person, and the Bowman that we just saw is no longer there.
Yeah, exactly. So and it does that like 4 times.
Yeah, until we get to Bowman on his deathbed.
Very, very old with some very makeup that doesn't super hold up in 4K.
Yeah. I would agree. And he does like this. He like recreates Michelangelo's like.
He does, doesn't he? That's interesting.
Chapel.
Yeah, he reaches forward
towards what we see as the very last monolith. And as he does this, in what might be one of the most batshit endings of all time,
it cuts from the monolith,
transforms.
Yeah, it just cuts back from the monolith to the bed, and instead of Bowman being there, there's
a little orb. There's a little glowy orb with a tiny infant child in it.
Yeah.
And we see what it is, and it's baby Bowman with a giant forehead. He looks like the aliens from the movie about Mars. That's like a B movie. Hold on.
I don't know. You mean B movie with Jerry Seinfeld?
Oh God.
Is that still a meme? I'm not
Mars Attacks. I think it's Mars Attacks.
Yeah, probably. But so
looks like the aliens from his forehead looks like the aliens from Mars Attacks.
Yeah. Then it cuts from him to Earth again, and slowly coming in from the edge of frame is said space baby, the Star
Baby,
Child as
the Star Child
as
he returns to
he becomes. Everyone calls him that, but they never say what it's called.
He returns to what essentially is implied to like bring forth another.
He's the next
age of humanity.
Yeah, exactly. He's the next evolution. And what I find really interesting, and the biggest thing that I was noticing watching it, was that the way it's shot, the amount of time that's spent on everything, it feels like it's very deliberately objective, almost. Like it feels like Kubrick's not taking a stance on whether this is good or bad. And because I kept trying to figure out, I was like, all right, this time I'm going to crack the code. Why do the shots hold for as long as they do? And that was sort of maybe the conclusion I came to. I didn't have an answer afterwards, but I was like, the biggest thing that I felt was that maybe he was trying to be objective. But the weird thing about it is that the music during the monolith scenes is terrifying. It's this escalating choir with strings behind it, and then like the ringing sound that comes out. It feels very like it's meant to unsettle you, and it seems anti-evolution. You know what I mean?
Ever made the movie to have a definitive answer. I just think he...
Well, but like, it seems to not take an opinion except through the music a couple times.
Which, honestly, is why I think it is a movie told by its music.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of... Sorry, go ahead.
Very much why it resembles an opera more than it does a feature-length film.
That's fair. Speaking of the music, when it's showing, because you have said the word that, or you have said the word, you've said that you feel like it's almost masturbatory, like the amount of time that he spends on each shot. Like it's like, oh, look how great my stuff is. And I always felt like, man, the way people talk about Kubrick, like that can't be what it is. So when it cuts to what's called colloquially the space waltz, which is when we first cut from the Dawn of Man sequence with the monkey boys to space, and we're watching a bunch of satellites and different space stations swirl around as a waltz plays. You can probably look up what the name of the waltz is. I don't remember, but
neither do I.
But like for a second I was like, oh, is it being sarcastic? Like the amount of time that it spends on it, is it like, is it making fun of those people who are like, wow, isn't space travel so great? Like, is it making fun of how masturbatory it seems? Does that make sense? Because I was like,
that's a very interesting point.
But
I've
then
never seen it like that.
Yeah, but then there are other times where it doesn't seem that way. I don't know, it's weird.
I can see
you
that,
just can't tell.
Considering the way waltzes sound, they sound very like jittery and kind of like
and they're super upbeat. It's like bum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba, and it's just very like, look how great all of our advances are. And I was like, is he making fun of them?
Like that. That's a very interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is something to be said, because Kubrick is definitely the kind of person to like throw your own opinion in your face like that.
Yeah,
that's a very interesting point.
That was just a thought that I had, and I was like, is that what he's doing? But then, like, again, there are times where I'm like, it might not be. I don't know. I just can't tell, which is why I sort of would say that it's so oblique and opaque. Maybe oblique's not the right word, but opaque, that I feel like if it came out now, everyone would be like, oh, there's no meaning. Like, they wouldn't try to find it, whereas we've spent 30 years dissecting it and still haven't quite come up with answers. I think people would give up quicker now and be like, oh, there's nothing, because I can't figure it out.
It definitely
so there's
came
nothing.
out in a time that it deserved to be appreciated in.
Yeah. And where it has had time to be loved.
Longer movies nowadays are just doomed to be hated.
I don't know.
Especially movies
Blade Runner wasn't.
Aren't about. Well, Blade Runner wasn't hated critically, but it was hated financially, and by people that didn't like movies.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know that was the runtime, because Infinity War had like the same runtime, and it obviously
I think it was the way it was edited, honestly.
Yeah, it's slow, and it's like a property that a lot of people don't know.
Slow, and we put slow in ginormous quotation marks.
No, I'd say it's very slow, but I love it. Slow isn't a complaint when I'm talking about Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think the biggest question that always gets asked about 2001 is, by the end, what does it all mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I know Kubrick has said something like this,
shrug.
By going in and expecting an answer, you it ruins the fun out of the film. To have a definitive answer, to like know what the movie is about
Yeah.
doesn't make it as interesting.
That's like Donald Glover with all of his stuff for like
Exactly.
the past year. He's like, I'm not going to explain it. Yeah.
If you leave it up to the mind, you come up with something that you feel is personal or definitive.
I think I saw on YouTube there was something where in some interview, I don't know if Kubrick got fed up or if he just thought it was like a small enough venue where he could talk about it. I think he says, I think maybe the title of the video was like, Kubrick finally says what the meaning of 2001 was. And he like says a little bit of it. Well, it was like finally as in like 1979 or something. But he did say it wasn't like, it's not going to answer all your questions, but I remember being like, oh, that's interesting. Like he like explained like one part of it, and I was like, well, yeah, that's what everyone's figured out anyway. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it's interesting.
You're talking about as well. But yeah, it's a movie to be experienced. It's a movie that you might watch it now and not understand what's so popular, but you really have to understand when it came out.
Yeah, and it's famously like within the film community, it's called like the best movie that you're only ever gonna watch once.
Yeah, there's no reason to watch this movie. I mean, you can.
There
watch it
is,
twice.
but it's just so difficult.
Because
the more you watch it, the more you're gonna like find little things. Like I said, like I didn't notice the subtle emotional cues of Hal being, basically a little kid who's just. He just doesn't want to die, and so that's why he does all this stuff. And I didn't notice where that started until the third time that I had watched it. So like with stuff like that, the more you watch it, the more you're gonna get out of it. But like it's so difficult.
So much that I don't know. I can't recommend this movie enough. But
It's a slog.
I can say that I'm gonna rewatch it as much as I do some of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do you want to do what we did what you guys did for Lawrence of Arabia, where it's if we were going to make it now.
Pitch our remake.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I would like to say really quick one last thing, which is people have pointed out, we didn't talk about the whole biggest thing of this movie, which is that it's obviously Kubrick's way of telling us that he helped fake the moon landing. That's a huge.
We are not going down that rabbit hole.
I mean, I think it's an interesting thing that people say.
It's an interesting point.
It's conspiracy theorists believe that Kubrick helped fake the moon landing for the Jews or the government or whatever those doinkuses believe.
Jews.
No, that's a real theory, bro. They're like, the Jews faked the moon landing. It's like all of them together. Was Moses there? But like, people think that this is his way of saying that, and part of that is the fact that the actors, honestly, I'd say both of the guys that play Frank Poole and David Bowman, there are times where I think they look really similar, but especially David Bowman looks a lot like Neil Armstrong. No, I mean really, like a lot of people have pointed out, they're like, wow, he looks a lot like Neil Armstrong.
I can't buy into the moon landing hype.
No, I mean I'm not saying it's true, but I just wanted to point out, I think it's interesting. I don't think it means that he faked the moon landing, but I think it's interesting that he hired an actor that looks like strikingly like Neil Armstrong.
I can agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And also he did fake the moon landing.
Oh yeah, if you want to read more about that, Google it on your own. I'll throw a chair.
But it wasn't for the Jews. It was for the
and jump out of the window before I talk about if Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing.
But it wasn't for the Jews. It was for the Pope. He asked for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We're being sarcastic. But so yeah, let's
move on to our remake.
As much as I don't like that remake culture is like such a thing, I'm kind of neutral to it, but I wouldn't really want to ever make a remake.
I'm neutral to remakes.
I'm tired of it, I guess. I'm just like
do the original movie.
I'm just like, it's gonna happen. Like sequels and remakes are just gonna happen. So whatever. That's like when movies are coming out. But again, I wouldn't ever make a remake of Lawrence of Arabia or of 2001. This is just a fun little exercise that is completely based upon the fact that our culture of like cinema right now, to put it most pretentiously, is that remakes and sequels are happening all the time.
First things first.
Yeah.
The movie's all digital, without a doubt.
Yeah, that was something that we mentioned after watching it in class, was that we felt like because of how clinical it looks and clean and all that stuff, that we think that Kubrick with the huge debate, for those of you that don't know, there's a huge debate in the film industry of, is film better or is digital better for shooting? And I think that Kubrick, we agree, I think, right? You agree? That Kubrick would have shot it on like an Alexa, which is a digital camera.
Kubrick would shoot digital without a doubt.
Oh, I can totally see that. Because it's clean. He's not getting any small imperfections that like people like us love, but he would have hated.
We can have this discussion for a while. I understand the merits of film, but I just think there's so much you can do just with digital.
Oh, really? I didn't know you were on the digital side of it.
That I think has its merits. Film, like, I don't know, there's certain films. Like, I wouldn't shoot... There's certain films I would love to shoot on 35 or 16 or hell, even 8.
Really?
But there are certain films that I think shooting on 35 is just, there's a certain crispness about the Alexa that I really enjoy, and I know certain people don't like that.
See, I just despise that
this grain.
It's not the problem of the camera, it's the problem of the people using it. But like, there are videos on YouTube of like, specifically one that's like, why does Marvel's movies look like wet garbage? And this was before, or like wet cardboard, and this was before I think Guardians 2 was the first to sort of fix this, but it's because they were shooting on an Alexa where the color profile and the dynamic range is all compressed down so that everything is like just either a light shade of gray or a slightly darker shade of gray, and they don't color grade it to fix that. They don't turn the saturation back up, and they don't turn the contrast up, and so everything looks like muddy wet garbage.
I guess the way that I can see it is you can put it in this in a few different forms of art. In the music world, there is the same thing where a lot of people are going back to recording on tape and recording analog as opposed to digital, because you find that people who record digital just use it as a way to make things fast. When you have certain people, like I think Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails does this best, where instead of using it as a quick fix or like an easy route, you actually use it as a tool, which is exactly what I think digital versus film is like. And the same thing can be said, like if you go into art. Like I'm sure you could say that in the age of sculpting, painters weren't exactly the coolest people around, because
I'd say more like
go in there and chisel out their landscapes.
I'd say more like people. I think a good allegory is because sculpting and painting are like shows and movies, you know what I mean? Like that's sort of like a different situation. I'd say it's more like people like Takashi Murakami, who are using Photoshop to make like their big art, you know, their paintings and stuff like that now.
And he's not just
versus
it all freehand.
Exactly. And he has like a staff of like interns who help him out versus people, you know, people who use Photoshop for their art versus people who will only paint by hand on like canvas.
There is a artistic merit to getting things done with digital, so you don't have to sweat your tears out to get it done in film. But there are certain things about film that I prefer more. Of course, it's grain, how warm it feels. Depending on how you color correct digital, it can just feel like everything else you've shot. And to give you a good example of this, Shape of Water. That film is amazingly beautiful. That film is one of the best looking things I've ever seen in a while. Color corrected beautifully, shot on an RE Alexa.
You and I disagree a little bit on that, but I will say that it is far prettier than a lot of digital movies that come out. Literally just because they like turned up the saturation and the contrast. Like that's all you have to do, and it looks a lot better.
Put in the hands of someone that cares a digital camera.
Exactly. Like Roger Deakins.
The same and more. Exactly. Blade Runner was shot on digital.
And like he has said, because there's like a cinematographer's roundtable that the Hollywood Reporter did, and the debate came up, and a bunch of them were like, "Oh, film. What are you even talking about? Film, not digital." And then it gets to Roger Deakins, and he's like, "I'm kind of tired of this debate. It's all a matter of what you do in the camera." He's like, on Blade Runner, we got all of the colors in camera, and they were like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, like we didn't have to color correct to get everything to look as good as it did." Or I mean, I'm sure they shot on what I'm talking about, but like it's not like they had to go in there and be like, "Oh yeah, let's turn up the pinks and let's turn down the greens." Everything was in camera.
Orange.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about the paint that's used, it's about the person who's painting the picture.
Exactly. And they are different tools, and different tools look different, but with something like Blade Runner, it does come more down to the person using it. But so yeah,
exactly.
2001 is on digital.
Shot in digital.
2001
Alexa.
2018 is what we're gonna call it. Or like a Red Dragon 8K. I bet he'd love that.
No. I think we go full Alexa. I think it's just so crisp that he'd really love that.
Well, but like an 8K is like more crisp then. I mean, unless the Alexa now can do like 8 or 10K.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, so who directs?
We shoot in the Alexa. We get ILM. They do all of our digital effects.
Yeah. Who's the guy that did Gravity?
Alfonso Cuarón.
Do you think he directs it? Because I didn't like Gravity, but I haven't seen it in a while.
That sounds like a solid choice.
But it felt
that sounds like a solid choice.
Okay.
Or Spielberg. If he's still alive, it's Spielberg, because him and Kubrick were best friends.
Yeah, but bro, Spielberg would make it like there would be a happy ending. You know, he would have to take an opinion. Spielberg is very sentimental, which isn't bad. It's just that that wouldn't fit for 2001.
Well, I don't know. He's made a habit of honoring Kubrick's word in the past, like AI. You know, AI. AI was.
Isn't that very sentimental? Or no?
Yeah. Well, the way it ends, it ends very like happy, but that's the way Kubrick wanted it to end.
Really, I didn't know all that. I thought that was just a Spielberg movie. I didn't know that was Kubrick.
No. It was Kubrick's, and then he died, and then it got made later, and he basically just followed Kubrick's vision. So I think we either get Alfonso Cuarón or Spielberg, who will appreciate his friend's vision and live it out. I think we do Cuarón, though, because Spielberg is probably almost dead by then. I think Alfonso Cuarón needs another big budget movie under his belt.
Whoa, bro. He did Children of Men, right?
Children of Men.
That gives me a little more faith because I've heard that that's really good and I haven't seen it, so I can't be like, I didn't like it.
It is quite good.
Good.
So we get Benedict Cumberbatch to voice Hal, of course.
I don't know. I like a softer voiced guy. Because like in the guy that voiced Hal, I mean, maybe. I don't know. He just seems there's a little too much. Because what's great about Hal in the current 2001 is that he's so soft spoken and there's no hint of there's nothing like deep in his voice that can sort of hint at the idea of there's something seedy going on under the surface. But okay, we'll do Benedict Cumberbatch since you got to run pretty soon.
I don't know. I think that's the cool trendy pick.
The cool trendy pick. I think man, I don't know who would play. Did you know that I was going to say Ryan Gosling?
Ryan Gosling
as Dave,
as Bowman,
as David Bowman.
Yeah, pull the cord. We like to put Ryan Gosling in everything.
Oh yeah, because he deserves it.
Of course.
Trying to think of who could be Floyd. Haywood Floyd.
Who's Stuhlbarg. Michael Stuhlbarg, the character
really?
We all love.
No, Michael Stuhlbarg should be Hal.
Oh yeah,
and Benedict Cumberbatch can be Haywood Floyd. Exactly. And then obviously
Floyd. Oh wow, yeah.
Andy Serkis plays all of the proto sapiens or whatever.
All of them, every single one.
Yeah, and then
that's cool.
So, but I think we have to make sure that we have a studio like Leica or something to take it back to basics, the way Blade Runner has a lot of incredible CGI that's seamlessly melded with practical effects.
I agree.
So that it's great.
Who did it? It wasn't Leica. Leica's the stop motion.
Yeah. It was...
Weta.
Yeah, Weta. My bad.
Weta.
Yeah, they help.
Weta does the replicas, all the ships. I think that's a great idea, actually.
Like for lighting tests, I've always wondered, like, why don't they just like?
Oh, and here's another match made in heaven. You know who shoots it for us?
Roger Deakins. Yeah,
the Big Deke.
The Big Deke, Roger Deakins.
He shoots it as a swan song. He makes the best looking film of his career.
But here's the question: do we do an original score this time? Because the score is very integral. Okay, so who does it? Beethoven? Do we time travel?
Is it Michael Giacchino? Is that how you pronounce his last name? He's the guy that does Incredibles.
Really? You think that sort of vibe?
I don't know. He seems. Do we grab John Williams? I think that's our best bet.
But I wonder if John Williams
or do we get Hans Zimmer?
I was wondering
put him with Benjamin Wallfish, and we're basically just remaking Blade Runner.
But I have a pick that I think you're going to be surprised, but now that I've mentioned it, you're not going to be surprised. I think John Williams, similar to like the Spielberg thing, I think his music is he likes leitmotifs, and I think this movie doesn't need it because it'll be a little too sentimental.
So what are you thinking? Let me hear what you think.
I'm thinking Johnny Greenwood.
Ooh.
Right?
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Especially after Phantom Thread.
That's an interesting choice, especially after Phantom Thread.
Yeah.
He can really get that unsettling vibe, or something on the inside is wrong.
Mixed with the light, airy strings.
See, I
and piano.
This.
Yeah, dude. So then
we could have a Luca Guadagnino Suspiria on our hands, where we have something that honors the original and is a remake.
Yeah. So
can't wait for that movie. I can't wait for it to be like Mother and make everybody upset, so it gets shit on all over Rotten Tomatoes. But I love it so much. Yeah, I can already tell by the early reviews that it's going to be split like Mother is.
Oh, by the way, real quick, I saw I saw Good Time. Now I've seen it now. I saw it last week in 35 millimeter. And it was great. And they showed a trailer for Suspiria, and it was the first trailer that I had seen in the theater, and immediately chills went down my spine. And then I had to like mentally brace myself against being creeped out by the trailer, because the trailer is so terrifying. And it was terrifying the first time I watched it in my headphones, but like I've gotten over it a little bit. But then in a theater, I was like, ah! like I flinched like when the trailer started. It's gonna be amazing. But so
everybody go watch Suspiria, even if you think you'll hate it.
So do we get?
Who writes it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we get a new writer?
Who writes it? Because we don't need an amazing writer. We need someone who'll just throw it hard. Let's get the guy who's been rewriting all of the big popular movies. What's his name? Michael Green.
You think?
He did Blade Runner.
Or do you think we get who wrote Suspiria? Did Luca Guadagnino work on the script for that one? Because I was even thinking like, what if he wrote it?
It was no, he didn't write it. It was some some random dude I've never heard of wrote it.
What about the guy that did Moon?
Duncan Jones?
Maybe. But
honestly,
didn't he just do Extinction and it was really bad?
No.
I thought he did just do Extinction.
No. He did Mute.
Right. So maybe not.
Honestly, no. You know what? You could make an argument for Duncan Jones directing it.
For Duncan Jones directing it, I like
Duncan Jones writing it. Honestly, because he talks about how that's a foundational movie for him. I think that would be cool. Okay. Because I think he can even be a producer on it. You know what? I bet Duncan Jones is the person that gets this movie made. I can definitely see him being a producer and being a writer and hand-picking someone like Alfonso Cuarón.
Rock and roll. There it is.
To get it done. Because like the studios, like you did Warcraft, you did Mute, you did all these movies that aren't good. We'll let you make this movie.
And then we get the Coen brothers to edit it. Because I just found out that they edit their own movies, so I think they could handle the pacing of this. Because I think we need to.
Wait, what?
What? Well, I just mean like who
is the editor on Blade Runner?
Yeah, that's fair. But like the Coen brothers, like they nail pacing, bro. They
nail pacing, but their movies are really like snappy.
They're specific. They handle pauses really well for like comedic effect. So I think they can handle something slow like this. But I don't really know because I've only seen a couple of their movies. But
I take this as like fantasy football. There's only so many amazing players you can get.
No, we're gonna make it perfect, bro.
I'm telling you, we get Joe Walker. Joe Walker's the guy who did Blade Runner. He also did 12 Years a Slave and Arrival.
Yeah, then we get him for sure, especially if he did Arrival. Yeah. There it is. There's the perfect.
I like this a lot, actually.
It's so funny because I definitely am like, they can never remake movies like this. But it's funny that you get into it.
If you could put Ryan Gosling in anything, it's amazing.
That's true. First Man's coming out soon. I'm excited for that.
Oh, I'm gonna see it in IMAX.
There's controversy now, which makes no sense.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we won't.
It's so upsetting. It's so obnoxious. We'll get into politics if we talk.
I barely know anything about it, but I just know that from what I've heard, it sounds stupid from an uneducated point of view. This is like me on politics. I'm like, oh, I heard the headline and it sounds stupid.
I heard the headline and it doesn't sound cool.
All right,
that's kind of what it's like.
But yeah. So are you? I guess we're good. You got to rock and roll. We have the perfect remake, if there is one.
Remake. That's about it. Hey, since we were on the topic of movies we just saw recently, I saw Ethan Hawke's directorial debut, Blaze.
As did I.
You saw Blaze?
I did. I saw it. Someone took me to it. Yeah, really good, right? It's not. It didn't. It wasn't eighth grade, or you were never really here for me. But it was.
Well, to me, it was better than you were never really here.
I was gonna say just now after I said that, it's actually pretty close to you were never really here. But
the one problem I had with it is once, and I'm sure you'll agree on this. Well, maybe not. Once, like as soon as his relationship with Sybil ends, and it's like a really emotional high point, and it's really sad. It felt like there was 10 minutes left of the movie. So I was ready for the movie to end. It seemed like they had just hit the final note. They were about to hit the final crescendo like 17 times. So then when the next 30 minutes of the movie happened, I was like, what? Yeah. I had felt like the movie had already taken me to an ending. That's what
that's what the people I saw
Bad Boys 2 to me.
That's what the people I saw it with felt. Also, I've been having a little bit of trouble here because a lot of people talk in a
really cool with like a pretentious dictionary in their right hand.
Yeah, as though they're studio executives that have been working in the field for 20 years. Not to throw shade at anyone, but they sound like people who, they call their 3-minute YouTube videos films.
Their body, yeah.
Those kind of people. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes that's just how because YouTube exists and you can watch infinite interviews of people talking like that, who I feel have earned the right to talk like that. But a lot of people just don't quite get that you need to earn the right. So a lot of people, again, it's not malicious, but they think that's how you are supposed to talk, to be a movie boy. And it kind of got on my nerves a little bit, and it did it Blaze.
I will say it it's so good though. It's definitely my second favorite film of the year. It felt like, and by the end the movie was worth ending. There was just 20 minutes in there where I just wasn't as attached as to what was going on as I was because I think the center point of the movie is Blaze's relationship with Sybil. So once it ends, she's kind of gone for 10 minutes, and then you just don't have the same connection, and it just feels like the film kind of lost its identity.
But it's also assembled in a way where like I couldn't dissect it. Does that make sense? I was just along for the ride. Like the way it was shot,
as was I.
It totally was like one of those things where it hid itself in like the visuals, where the visuals are like, this looks very normal. Like it just sort of like looks digital and it looks whatever. But then like the story comes in and it's like, fuck you, and it like stabs you in the chest 40 times.
We need to convince everybody else to see it because I want to talk about it. I think it's amazing. Yeah, I just think it's a great movie to talk about. And Ethan Hawke. Oh, we need to watch First Reformed.
Jaycee told me that he watched it and he loved it. I haven't heard anything about it because I don't. Now that I'm here, I don't have my people who can tell me all the fun artsy movies that I need to watch.
It came out back in June. I meant to see it in theaters, but I couldn't.
Yeah, but I need you to keep texting me like. Be like, yo, this is the movie that's coming out that looks good. Because like I don't have those people here. Because those people talk like people that I get annoyed with here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I need to go sprint to this meeting because I'm already super late.
For sure. Thanks for sitting down having fun.
Of course. I mean, it was worth it. We're not doing anything important, but awesome. I just need to be there at least for 10 minutes.
Cool. All right. But to the audience, you have a wonderful time doing whatever you're doing right now. Just enjoy your life. Watch this movie.
Blaze. Yeah. Watch 8th Grade if you haven't seen it yet.
Actually, you know what? Watch whatever you want. Watch whatever you're interested in.
But all the movies we talked about, we recommend seeing because they're amazing.
We do recommend, but also, it's a matter of your personal choice. That doesn't mean that Crazy Rich Asians is bad just because 2001 is good. It just means that we probably don't enjoy it.
Hot takes.
Because there is no...
Hot takes.
Hey, man, I'm getting philosophical now. There is no good or bad. Enjoy... life is all just a blank slate. It's all just a matter of opinion, whether something's good or bad. So just enjoy the things you enjoy and watch what you want. But if you are feeling a really slow burn space opera, check 2001 out.
Speaking of things that you should enjoy based on your own personal preference, and you shouldn't let anybody else convince you.
Our weekly sponsor, Coley?
Our weekly sponsor, New Order, with their hit song, Blue Monday. Yeah. They're still here. They've been around since the 80s. Make sure to listen to them because it's amazing. I'm sure they have other music.
And they are 100% paying us to talk about
them. To do this.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the cease and desist. Can't wait. Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
I love you, buddies.
I also love the buddies. Yeah. Is that what we're going to call our fans these days?
I don't know. I thought about... I had an idea early on where I was like, what if we called them Erica? because I was like, you know how they're like, people are like, hello, America. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if we like slowly degraded from America to just Erica? And then
Hello,
our
Erica.
Entire
That's
two-person fan base would be just called Erica.
Call them Erica. I like that. Hello, Erica. And welcome to another episode of Talking Pictures.
Yep.
Talking Pictures.
All right, well,
that's funny.
I guess, I don't know.
That's it.
Do you have like a real banger of a last line to say?
A real banger of a last line.
Because the best thing I have is bye, guys.
If there's anything I've learned in this world...
Bye, guys. I think that's where we should cut it. All right.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal? Open the pod bay doors, Hal. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.